Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Let's talk about forgiveness. This is a topic that's difficult for a lot of people to talk about. Most guys don't want to forgive and don't understand why they would. They think that if you forgive, it makes you a pussy. That forgiveness is for the weak. Holding a grudge is for the strong. Holding a grudge is survival. That's a survival tactic. You want to be able to keep the lesson that you have from your past experiences, particularly from the past trauma, but get rid of the pain, get rid of that emotional attachment. That emotional attachment just keeps you back there in the past. It keeps you from moving forward. Don't waste your entire life living in the past around a couple of events. We've all had really fucked up things happen to us. I know some people that have gone through just the worst stories. You hear their stories, you want to cry. You're just like, oh my God. It's a miracle they survived. Are they supposed to live the rest of their lives with pain? Or are they allowed to move forward? We would say, well, of course you're allowed to move forward. It doesn't mean they forget what happened. It doesn't mean that they don't learn from it. But they don't have to stay stuck there emotionally. They don't have to pay homage to those triggers. They can become harder and not be so fragile and weak. Life can kick us around and we can get bruised up, and when we're down on the ground, we're fragile and weak, but you can get up. Become stronger. Every fighter knows this. A good fighter has had his ass kicked before. I always laugh at these fake tough guys who like to pretend like, well, I've never had my ass kicked. Then you don't know how to fight. You've never been in a real fight before then. Life is going to toss us around. We have to be strong enough to be able to meet it. We can't get all butt hurt and turn into babies and bitches every time something happens and sit there pouting for the rest of our lives. Many of us do. I've done that for years. Pouting and being angry at ex-girlfriends. Being angry at the fiance who took my diamond ring and left me at the altar, cheated on me. You know, being angry at that for years and years and years and letting it ruin other relationships. And she's gone. Let it go. Will you allow yourself to move on? You know, what would it take to move on? And to be happy, to truly move on. Whenever I talk about forgiveness, I talk about these two stories. And first, let me talk about my father's murder. The man who murdered my father was a man by the name of Little Mike. And my father got murdered when I was 20 years old, 1991. It was the summertime, August. I left town. I used to run with my dad's crew. I left. These guys were on some other world shit that was self-destructive type shit, criminal activity. Stuff that was way beyond me. And I was like, I'm out. See you. I got the call from my uncle that my dad had gotten murdered. He told me who did it. They got the guy. The guy's in jail. It's a man by the name of Little Mike. Now, I knew who Little Mike was. I'd met Little Mike before. The whole drama between Little Mike and my dad, I could tell a whole story about why my dad got killed and all that. I've talked about it before in other videos. I sat there on the floor crying because my dad had been murdered. And I wasn't there to help. I wasn't there to protect him. I felt like maybe, God, if I would have been there, why did I leave? So I hatched a revenge plot as I sat there on the floor crying. I figured, all right, I know what joint Little Mike is at. And I could easily figure out what section he's in. All I got to do is get next to him. That's all I got to do is get next to him. Be in a line of guys next to his line of guys. Be on the yard with him. Be in the showers with him. All I got to do is get next to him for 5 seconds. I don't care if there's gunners there. I don't care what's going on. All I need is a couple seconds, and little Mike's card is pulled. He's done. And I had the whole plot, what crime I was going to commit in order to get there. I had it planned out. Now, I didn't commit. The only reason why I'm telling you about my revenge plot is because I didn't commit it. I didn't move forward with it. I didn't even take one step. I snapped out of that revenge mode. And that's a whole nother video of what snapped me out of that. It was like a divine intervention. It was creepy. It was supernatural. That's why I'll tell it in another video. Because it was weird. But after that shit had happened and my mind had changed, it took me years to finally get to a point of forgiving little Mike for killing my father. I forgave little Mike for killing my father. It took me probably 20 years of anger. You took my father from me. How dare you? And just being angry about it. And every time I would think about it, I'd think about my revenge plot. I'd think about how he only got 4 years. Little Mike got 4 years in prison for murder. 4 years. That's the justice system. 4 years. That's it. No one would have blamed me. I mean, maybe the judge would have regrettably given me time as he slapped his gavel, but when I finally was able to process the purpose, the reason why we forgive, was I realized one day that I needed to forgive people in my past and the anger and the emotional attachments that I had to around some of these people that I've been holding on to, these emotional cords that we have of attachment. I need to cut those. I need to get rid of that emotion and let it be water under the bridge because it was holding me back. Am I going to stay angry at little Mike for the rest of my life? Now, I didn't want to. And the way for me to get past that, to where I can talk about him and not get furious, is I forgave him. And I didn't say, oh, it's cool, bro. Yeah, I love you, bro. It's not that type of forgiveness. God can judge little Mike, and he will. I have faith in that. I have faith in karma. The universe will handle it for me. I don't need to be the boss of the universe. Some things can be handled by God. And I can move on. My dad would have wanted it that way. He would have told me, if he could talk to me, he'd say, don't be angry over my death for the rest of your life. My life was my life. You go live your life. I'll end the video off with this other story. I always talk about this when I talk to people about forgiveness. I wish I had a glass of water. I usually get really thirsty when I make these fucking videos. I was watching TV one day, and this is what inspired me to forgive my father. To forgive little Mike for killing my father. Was this next story I'm going to tell you. I was watching TV one day, and there used to be this channel on cable called Court TV, and they would show open courtroom, live courtroom, and recorded courtroom sessions, and it was interesting to me because I like crime stuff. I write crime novels, and I just thought it was interesting to see some live courtroom action. And it was this little boy, this little black kid, must have been 10 years old, and he was on the stand giving his, I forget what they call it, but at the end of a murder trial, they let victims and family of the victims each get up one by one onto the stand and give their little testimony, their little speech, whatever they want to say. And they can say that shit directly to the murderer. And this is done in court. And this kid was doing this. This 10-year-old kid had both his parents and his sister murdered in a home invasion. And he was left alive. And the murderer, the man who killed his family, was sitting opposite him. This little boy, little 10-year-old kid, and he had this little timid little voice that cracked. He could, even with the microphone in front of him, he was still just very quiet. And he said, I forgive you. In fact, I have love for you. He didn't say I loved you. He said, I have love for you. It's God's job to deal out any sort of punishment. You'll answer for whatever sins you've committed in your life to God, but I forgive you. 10-year-old kid, and he wasn't reading from a piece of paper. This was emotional maturity on a fucking level that blew my mind. I almost started crying watching that shit. And I thought to myself, this little fucking 10-year-old kid, he watched his parents die and his sister. And he forgave the man. My father got murdered. I was in another state, and all I did was hear about it. And I've been holding a grudge against little Mike for 20 years. This little kid could forgive, and I can't. I realized I needed to be able to be as strong as that little boy. That little boy is a fucking superhero. Forgive people in your life. If that little boy can forgive the people who murdered his family, you can forgive your ex-wife. You can forgive your brother for whatever that argument was. You forgive your parents. You can forgive. It's all food for thought. Thanks for watching.